Didn't work. Thanks for rescuing the thing there. Let's see. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna, we're studying Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, entitled The Son of Drona Punished. We're on text 6, and it's February 16th, 2025. So it's Canto 1, Srimad-Bhagavatam, Chapter 7, text 6. Okay. And we can start with the Sanskrit words responsively. Anarto pashamam. Anarto pashamam. Sakshad. Bhakti yogam. Adhokshaje. Lokasya janato. Vidvams. Chakre. Satvata. Samhitam. We can do one line at a time responsively. Anarto pashamam sakshad. Bhakti yogam adhokshaje. Lokasya janata vidvams. Chakre satvata samhitam. Anarto pashamam sakshad. Bhakti yogam adhokshaje. Lokasya janata vidvams. Chakre satvata samhitam. Anarto pashamam sakshad. Bhakti yogam adhokshaje. Lokasya janato vidvams. Chakre satvata samhitam. Would anyone else like to lead the chanting of the verse?
Anarto pasamam sakshad.
Anarto pashamam sakshad.
Bhakti yogam adhokshaje.
Bhakti yogam adhokshaje.
Lokasya janato vidvams.
Lokasya janato vidvams.
Chakre satvata samhitam.
Chakre satvata samhitam. Anyone online?
Anarto pashamam sakshat.
Anarto pashamam sakshad.
Bhakti yoga madokshaje.
Bhakti yogam adhokshaje.
Asya janato vidvams.
Lokasya janato vidvams.
Chakre sattvata samhitam.
Chakre satvata samhitam. Okay, so let's look at the word meanings responsibly. Anartha. Things which are superfluous. In our transformative communication language, we could understand anartas as grungies. They're superfluous to the core diamond self. I'm serious about this. Okay. Upashamam,
Upashamam,
mitigation.
mitigation,
Sakshat,
sakshat,
directly.
directly,
Bhakti yogam,
bhakti yogam,
the linking process of devotional service.
the linking process of devotional service,
Adhokshaje,
adhokshaje,
unto the transcendence.
unto the transcendence,
Lokasya,
lokasya,
of the general mass of men.
of the general mass of men,
Ajanata,
ajanata,
those who are unaware of.
those who are unaware of,
Vidvan,
vidvam,
the supremely learned.
the supremely learned,
Chakre,
chakre,
compiled.
compiled,
Sattvata,
sattva,
in relation with the supreme truth.
in relation to the supreme truth,
Samhitam,
samhitam,
Vedic literature.
Vedic literature,
Translation. The material miseries of the living entity which are superfluous to him can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. So this verse, it's quite an iconic, foundational, epic verse of Srimad-Bhagavatam. This is a verse from Srimad-Bhagavatam that describes how Vyasadeva got the inspiration to reveal the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So it's quite a key verse. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead. This statement suggests that the complete unit of the personality of Godhead includes his parts and parcels also. He saw, therefore, his different energies, namely the internal energy, the marginal energy, and the external energy. He also saw his different plenary portions and parts of the plenary portions, namely his different incarnations also, and he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned souls who are bewildered by the external energy. And at last he saw the remedial measure for the conditioned souls, namely the process of devotional service. It is a great transcendental science. It begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, he may endow him with his loving transcendental service. But even with the prescribed forms of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Such mitigation of material affection does not wait for development of transcendental knowledge. Rather, knowledge is dependent on devotional service for the ultimate realization of the supreme truth. Hare Krishna. So before continuing to discuss Srimad-Bhagavatam, we'll chant some other text to continue to invoke auspiciousness in our gathering. And my aspiration is to be in a prayerful mood in reciting these texts, such that I get the blessings of pure personalities like Srila Prabhupada and Srila Vyasadeva, that whatever I may speak appropriately and accurately represents the spirit and substance and content of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Om Angyanatimmirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Badan Saganalalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansikalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesh vabhadreshu nityam bhagavata seveya bhagavat utama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is practically completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, Text 6, Anarto Pashamam Sakshad Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janata Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. All right, so in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vedeshtasya Verahame Vedantkvid Vedabit Evacham. He says, I'm the goal of the Vedas. Krishna is the goal of the Vedas. He says, I'm the compiler of the Vedas. So if we read about the history of Krishna, we don't see him writing the Vedas. So what's Krishna mean when he says, I'm the compiler of the Vedas? So Krishna compiled the Vedas through his Srila Vyasadeva is his literary incarnation. Vyasadeva is a literary incarnation, especially empowered to reveal transcendentally divine literature. So the Vedas, especially even all around the world, Western countries, the past 50, 60 years, the Vedas, yoga, these terms are known. Okay, go to there are yoga studios everywhere. That wasn't the case in the 1950s, early 60s, but okay, largely due to Srila Prabhupada. Things like kirtan, even vegetarianism, so many things. Not that he gets credit necessarily, but because of Srila Prabhupada came to the West and established the Krishna consciousness movement. All right, so you say Vedas, oh yeah, the Vedas. Right, okay. So who compiled the Vedas? Krishna compiled the Vedas through Srila Vyasadeva. Now, so this is a series of verses where we're hearing about Vyasadeva, because Vyasadeva's realization. So it's very vital, because it's one thing like, okay, here's the words of these realized person, here's the words, here's what they say, it's so important. And then here's his personal realization. So it's the little context here. So Vyasadeva, this is maybe about 5,000 years ago. Little context, some history. So Vyasadeva, he's at a place on the banks of a river called the Sarasvati, at a place called Samyapras, And it's described in the early, it's a very beautiful description. He has a little cottage surrounded by berry trees. Okay. It's a very beautiful description. And okay, in the previous 3 chapters, we have we get we get entrance into a conversation between Srila Vyasadeva and his spiritual teacher named Sri Narada Muni. And basically, Vyasadeva had already compiled the Vedas. He revealed them. I'm using terms like compile and reveal to distinguish this from ordinary authorship and publishing. We can call it transpersonal authorship. So the Bhagavatam, the Vedas, they're existing eternally, and Vyasadeva is revealing them. He's revealing them. Because actually, in previous ages, if we just look at, let's say, the science of anthropology, anthropology indicates that more than 5,000 years ago, there's not really evidence of writing, okay, of writing. So the interpretation is that, well, people were too stupid to know how to write, and then they got smarter through evolution. Okay, so if we look at the Vedas, we can look at the same data, different interpretation. Because what the Vedas say is, if you go back to previous yugas, almost practically everyone was what's called a Shrutidar. Shrutidar means one who hears something once and remembers it for the rest of their life. Okay, so if we look at ourselves, we might say, I'm not really a Shrutidar. There's a few things I've forgotten, that I've heard. But so the Vedas, they're looking at like, yeah, no evidence of writing for more than 5 years. Not because like people were too unintelligent, because like people were like far evolved in intelligence, of all sorts of intelligence, and so they heard so they didn't need like, this kind of crude keyboard, and they need a crayon or something like that. Okay, so same evidence, different interpretation based on the Vedas, right? So everyone was a Shudra, but then Vyasadeva could see in this age people aren't so. It's just described prayena payusha sabya kalavasmin yugejana mandasumana matyo mandabhagayu pajuta. In this age, people are lazy and slow and quarrelsome. They fight over petty nothings. They fight over petty things, not spiritually inclined, always disturbed by nonsense. No, maybe no one here has any experience of any of that. So you just need to trust what Vyasadeva says. Yes, and I'll just go. That's right in the first chapter. I'll read the exact translation. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, people have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Okay, so like, yeah. So Bhagavatam's predicting the future of Kali Yuga. Okay, so Vyasadeva can see like, we need to write things down for people to get things in this age. So he revealed the Vedas in writing. Okay. And he revealed the Vedas. So this is like, just like the most epic literary accomplishment, in history. And then he's talking with Narada, and then he's feeling, as a result of that literary accomplishment, he's feeling despondent, depressed. He's feeling down and out. It's described chapters 4 through 6. He's feeling down. His spiritual teacher, Narada Muni, comes along and says, "You look really down. What's happening?" Vyasadeva shares, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially says, "You don't even need to ask me. Because with your super soul connection, you've got perfect, amazing empathy. You know what's happening." Narada Muni says, "Yep, you're right. Yep, you're right." And Narada Muni said, "Yeah, you're down now because you did like all these, the Vedas. I mean, the Vedas, but you know that like people in this coming age, this Kali Yuga, they're not going to get it. They're going to get distracted. They're going to get deviated." Narada Muni has some epic verses in chapter 5 of text 1 of Canto 1, and one verse says that all these Vedas that you've revealed, they're like Tat Vyasam Tirtam. Vyasam means like crows. The crows are a type of bird, and they'll go to the garbage. They'll go where there's dead bodies and blood. They'll go where there's that's what the crows do. And they say it's like all these Vedas you combine, they're like a pilgrimage place for crows. Now, it's not like Vyasadeva did some cheap romance novels or something. I mean, it's the Upanishads, for God's sakes. But Narada Muni is like, really? But like he said, people and Vyasadeva, yeah, you're right, because you see, like all the other Vedas, they point to pure bhakti towards Krishna, but they give so many other paths and this and that. Go to heaven, be good, go to heaven, and merge, and because they're meeting people where they at, and that way people's trust in the Vedas increase, and then they get the real message. But and they talk about, like, there's Vedas talks about meditation processes that kind of could be effective in the Satya Yuga when people were intrinsically spiritually inclined. And the method, like, means that, like, you would need to meditate for 60,000 years, kind of like, so it wasn't like meditate for 15 minutes a day for 2 months and you become God. Pay me $5,000. It works. Okay, so it wasn't like this is like the real thing, and like it's not really like all this stuff. It's not practical for this age, and it's all a distraction anyway, just to I mean, let's say example. Let's say if a parent needs a child to take some medicine. Okay, it's whatever. So then the dad or the mom, they're like, maybe they'll wrap it in a sweet and go, look, it's an airplane. Open your mouth for the airplane or something. Just because, like, so you try to make it palatable. So that's what the Vedas are about, including the yoga and this and that. So the ultimate goal of the Vedas is to come to pure devotional service to Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So Vyasadeva, being despondent, heard from Narada Muni, had that conversation, like 3 chapters of conversation right before this. And then there at Samyapras, surrounded by berry bushes, he goes into a trance of bhakti. That's described in text 4. Text 4 of this chapter. Bhakti yogam, bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite male apashat pusham purnam mayam chaya apashrayam. Yes. Thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw the absolute personality of Godhead along with his external energy, which was under full control. So the term yoga appears in the verse we read today, and it appears in that text 4 of this chapter. Yoga means to link in what we read today. The linking process of devotion. Yoga means plus, just like the English word to yoke means to connect. And so much of English comes from the Sanskrit. So in its ultimate sense, yoga means the self turning towards itself and self-realization, turning towards the Supreme Person in an attitude of devotion. So in his trance of bhakti, Vyasadeva saw the absolute truth is the personality of Godhead, not the undifferentiated oneness, not the void, not atoms or subatomic particles or so many other options. And Maya, Maya is on the shadows, on the backside of Krishna. Okay, so this is Vyasadeva's personal realization. And then he had the vision. As Kali Yuga went on, he saw all the living entities in this Yuga suffering like anything. That goes to the verse just preceding our verse from today. Yaya samohito jivo atmakam chigunatmakam paro pi manute nartam tadkritam chabi bhajyate. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. So Vyasadeva could see, because of misidentification of the shining spiritual self with dead matter in the body, everyone's suffering. And so he had that clear vision. And out of compassion, he revealed the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The Srimad-Bhagavatam is described Sarva Vedidiasanam Saram Samudritam. It's the cream of the Vedic literatures. So that's why Prabhupada gave us Srimad-Bhagavatam, right? He gave us Srimad, but it's described in the third verse of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Nigama kalptarur galitam palam shukamukaramrita drava samyutam. Pibata Bhagavatam. Nigama kalpatarur galitam palam shukamukad amrita samyutam. Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam mohar horasika buri bavuka. O expert and thoughtful persons, relish Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the ripened fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami, and therefore this Bhagavatam has become even tastier, although it was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Okay, so the ripened fruit of the desire tree of Vedic. So you can get anything you want from the Vedas. You want wealth. You want beautiful spouse. You want people to be attracted to you. You want renunciation. You want the feeling of merging, and you want mystic powers. It's all there in the Vedas, and it's all a distraction. It's there for a purpose, right? Krishna is speaking to us according to time and meeting us where we're at, giving us what we want, while encouraging us towards the ultimate goal of self-realization and pure love of God. And so this is the ripened fruit of Vedic literature. And so this section of verses, especially our verse today, this is like Vyasadev's movement and inspiration from transcendental depression and compassion, how he came to reveal the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is, you might say, it's the partial biography of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Partial biography because we've got 30 volumes. Could be 300, 3,000, 3 million volumes. And because the pastimes and the philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is wholly unlimited. There's a verse also spoken by Narada Muni to Srila Vyasadeva, where I'll just offer, it would seem that Narada Muni 5,000 years ago was predicting the appearance of Srila Prabhupada. That verse said, Tadvag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo, Yasmin Pratishloka Yabadavat Yapi, Namanyanantasya Yashon Kitanya Chundvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadava. So the previous verse, Narada Muni talked about Tadvaya Samchutam. All this literature you've compiled is like a pilgrimage place for crows. He said, but there's another quality of literature, that's for the swans. The swans, apparently they have some special ability. There could be water and milk, and they can draw out the milk. They can differentiate fine distinctions. So comparing crows to swans, to what extent are we crow-like in our lives and choice of literature? To what extent are we swan-like? So Narada Muni said, then there's the literature which is for the swan-like human beings. And that literature, he's referring to the Bhagavatam. That literature will create a revolution in the impious consciousness of this whole planet. Now, if we look historically, we know over the centuries, the Bhagavatam, it's been appreciated in different villages in India, but I don't know if growing up in the 60s and 70s into the 80s, and United States, never heard of Bhagavatam. You never heard of Bhagavatam growing up, like that. So
But Narada Muni said this will create a revolution in the whole consciousness of the planet. We don't see that until, until 1965. And what that verse says, the Bhagavatam, what this says, Narada Muni says, even if the Bhagavatam is irregularly composed, and actually we have a version of, it's on my shelf there, of the Prabhupada, before he came to the United States in 1965, he translated and purported the first canto without any editing, or there wasn't any spell check, and it's very rough. Okay, now Prabhupada's Bhagavatam is creating a viplavo, a revolution, and like here we are in Florida, here we are in Europe, here we are in parts of the world studying Bhagavatam, and our lives are transformed. So Narada Muni is predicting Srila Prabhupada. All right, so just a bit more. So that's about 5,000 years. If we about 2,500 years later, the Buddha appeared. Now, this is described in many places, including the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. I'm pointing to Bhakta James because I know you're reading that chapter now. So the Buddha is described. And so by that time, in the name of the Vedas, there was so much corruption and deception and just vile misrepresentation and misinformation. In the name of the Vedas, there was just this massive animal slaughter. It was kind of similar, like in the time of Jesus, when Jesus went into the temple of David and Solomon, and the leaders of the religion at the time, the temple was becoming like a slaughterhouse, and Jesus, in a rage, turned over the tables. It was a somewhat similar thing. Not that Buddha got, violent, transcendently violent that way, but Buddha could see that the Vedas were being messed. People were just cruel and violent to animals, and they were doing the name of the Vedas. So the Buddha, you might say it's some divine transcendental trickery. The Buddha's an Akshaktivesh avatar of Krishna, and he appeared and he said, forget about the Vedas, just follow me, because they were just too messed up. So then, and the Buddha gave some sort of Buddhist philosophy. See, Vyasadeva, he gave the ultimate conclusion of the Vedas. The technical term is Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, which means inconceivable and simultaneous oneness and difference. And in a sense, we're one with God, and we're different. We're not exactly the same as Krishna, and we're not completely different. The analogy given, just like if we're here at 7 a.m., I can say, the sun is coming into my living room. So that's true, because the sun rays are non-different from the sun. The sun rays are the sun. Still, when I say the sun's coming into my living room, it's not that the sun globe is in David Wolf's house. No, the sun globe is there, right? So the sun rays, they're not completely different from the sun globe, but they're not exactly the same. That's an analogy to begin to unravel how we're one with and different from Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So the Buddha gave some Buddhist philosophy, and he got people to follow God in a tricky way. And then about 1,000 years after the Buddha came a great acharya named Sri Shankaracharya, and he brought people back to the Vedas, and he gave kind of a we're all one, undifferentiated oneness philosophy. A lot of what you hear in the name of it's all one, like Vedas, people don't even know where it comes from, but it comes from Shankaracharya. So it's kind of the same philosophy as the Buddhist philosophy, but Shankaracharya, because the Vedas, there is no void. There is no void. That's all false. But the idea that there's oneness, there's truth to that. It's not the complete truth. Vyasadeva is getting realization of the complete absolute truth. Just like as a basic analogy, if let's say it's pitch dark outside and all the windows are shut and everything is complete dark, what do we see? Nothing. I'm not able to make distinctions. Oh, that's a chair, that's a doorknob, nothing. Okay, let's say we're here in this room and there's a bank of football stadium lights shining in our eyes. What do we see? Nothing. No distinction. Okay? So it's practically the same. All right. So I'm going to skip over some history, just a few highlights. So then in the 1,000 years or so after Shankaracharya, there's a series of 4 Vaishnavacharyas who gradually brought the world towards the ultimate complete Veda conclusion of Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. Those 4 Vaishnavacharyas, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarkacharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, and then after that, about 530 years ago, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and he Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahayanya. He's actually Radha and Krishna combined. So he's giving Vyasadeva's full conclusion, and Srila Prabhupada brought that to the West about 60 years ago. Now, in this particular verse, so Prabhupada's talking about chanting. We talked about this morning that. And at last, Vyasadeva saw the remedial measure for the conditioned souls, namely the process of devotional service. It is a great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we talked how like chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's a prayer. Please, Krishna, please, God, engage me in your service. It's a prayer, and simultaneously, it's the answer to the prayer. Because there's 9 categories of devotional service, and the 2 foundational categories are hearing and chanting the names of God. Hearing and chanting the names of God. It's described earlier in the Bhagavatam, chapter 2, text 17. Shrin Vatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanam Vidanta Stoya Bhajani Vidu Noti Suritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in the heart of all living entities and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, personally cleanses the heart from material desire for the devotee who has developed the urge, the attraction, the attachment to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So at the beginning of the class, this text starts with the term anartha. Anartha means unwanted things. It's defined here as things which are superfluous. In transformative communication language, it's like the grungy, the dust on the diamond, whatever analogy we want to use, right? Because that's it. Like the toxic anger, toxic resentment, wallowing in depression, all that stuff that's not natural for the spiritual self. So Vyasadeva has a vision of all the anarthas, of all the living entities in Kali Yuga. And as a result, he's inspired from compassion. Give them Bhagavatam. Give them Bhagavatam. Itanya Vidimananam, Ichitam Akutobayam, Yoginam Nripinir, Itam Haranam Kirtanam. It's described whatever our desires, however twisted our mentality is, chant the names of Krishna, and we'll get purified. And so it's described that Krishna personally cleanses the heart to the extent that we develop an attraction for the chanting. And Prabhupada makes some very, well, I consider them interesting comments here. He says, revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, he may endow him with his transcendental loving service. But even with the prescribed forms of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Yeah, it's described Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yashu Vairagyam Gyanam Chayad Hetukam. Simply by serving Krishna, Vasudeva is the name of Krishna. Naturally, we get spiritual knowledge. What I mean by that, what the Vedas mean by that, is we get realization of who we are is not the body and blissful spirit soul. So studying is part of the service, and it's by chanting, by engaging in offering flowers to the pure devotee Srila Prabhupada, then we come alive in knowledge. And what Prabhupada, the part of the purport we just now read, it reminds me of the term to work like everything depends on us, and pray like everything depends on Krishna. Once we commit, then providence moves. So ultimately, like to develop that blissful love of God, it's the grace of God, Krishna's grace. At the same time, it's a personal relationship. That's Vyasadev's realization here. Right? The complete ultimate form of the absolute is the personality of Godhead. So in personal relationship, we show a drop of sincerity, and Krishna's like, oh, Krishna will come to us with an ocean of mercy. So like, our job is to show sincerity. Krishna's not going to force us to love him, but we show some sincerity. Yes, I'll commit to chant 1 round per day, 16 rounds. I'll chant your names. I'll chant your names. I'll engage in. I'll come to more. I'll read your book, the Bhagavatam. It's a literary incarnation of Krishna. Krishna Swadhamabhad Agate Dharmagana Divisaha. Kalavasminu Gejana Kalonasham Jushamesha Purnako Dunoditas described that upon the apparent disappearance of Lord Krishna, Bhagavatam is representing Krishna as the light of this age. And that's also spoken in the first canto. And so we show some sincerity, and then Krishna gives us mercy to clear the anarthas, to support us, to pull the weeds in the heart. And Prabhupada's making like an analogy we can use. It's just like, okay, there's the blazing sun in the noon sky, and that represents just that pure, blissful love of God. And that's there in the chanting. What Prabhupada's saying, okay, but we're chanting, we're not so attentive, we're not so sincere, we're attached to the weeds, we're attached to the dirt, but we're doing some chanting. And Prabhupada's making the point that, okay, like even that form of chanting in our beginning stages, even that form of chanting, just like, let's say it's dark out, another dark analogy, and we're walking and it's really scary. Like, there could be someone ready to attack me behind that tree. Maybe the next step, I'm going to fall into a ditch. Maybe there's a snake about to bite. It's very scary. But then even the first rays of sunlight, the first dawning of sunlight. I can see. Oh, it's actually, there's a field there. No, this is a safe place. No, there's no one's going to attack me from behind that tree. Just even the first rays of light, it's a relief. It's not the blazing sun in the noon sky. So even with chanting, not with that full, loving, devotional intensity, which we want to at least aspire for that. But even just some chanting, just even mechanically, I committed to do this. I came to morning program, committed to chant. And Prabhupada would say, even with that, we feel the dawn, the sun rising, the sattvic relief that comes after, that comes after the darkness of Rajas and Tamas. And so, so there's some knowledge that represents the beginning of transcendence, the beginning of sattva, beginning of knowledge, and the sun's beginning to rise. I can see some things. Again, and then as we at Shara Tata, this word anartha, it's a very common word we hear a lot. Anartha, weeds in the heart, grunges, dirt, dust on the diamond, whatever analogy we want to use. Tato nartha nivriti shat. And so as we pull the anarthas through the chanting process, through the science of bhakti, science means it gives us a direct experience. It's not just theoretical. Then gradually we develop more and more of a taste, and more it becomes not just like you both heard, everyone here's heard, most of you here heard me tell this. It's not said, oh, I have to chant my rounds, but more and more, oh, I get to rise for a morning program, and like that we develop more and more of a taste, and then steadiness as we get the higher taste. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vishaya Vivartanirartate Niraharaside Namasam Varja Sopyasya Param Jushta Nivartate. Krishna says, look, all these habits you're struggling with, we're all struggling with habits. We're not going to do a whole kind of circle of secrets here like that, but we can all do extensive journaling about habits we've been struggling with. Krishna says, like, you're not going to be able to give them up. Sorry, unless you get a higher taste. Unless you get a higher taste to replace the lower taste. The analogy Prabhupada gives, like if a child's being mischievous and destructive, and the parents can say, just sit in the corner and do nothing, just sit there. So the child can sit in the corner and do nothing, maybe for 5 seconds if it's a good day, and then the child will need to do the destructive thing again. Higher intelligent parenting is saying to the child, giving the child, giving the child something constructive and healthy and life enriching that's even more fun than the destructive thing. And then after a few moments, the child's not even thinking of the destructive thing. So the engaging the senses and the mind in bhakti, that's higher intelligent parenting. That's higher intelligent parenting. That in the analogy, our senses and mind represent the child who always wants to, can do mischief, get us in trouble, degrade us. But then we engage the senses and mind in bhakti yoga. So like here we are, some are here for like 5 hours now, 4 or 5 hours. And kind of like, oh, we could have had so much more fun if we were like scrolling on the internet, if I just kind of slept on it. No, it's just like there's some austerity, rise early, but 4 or 5 hours and we feel like the soul coming alive, higher taste. Hare Krishna. Thank you for giving your attention to Srimad-Bhagavatam. Today we're studying and discussing Canto 1, Chapter 7, Text 6, Anarto Pashamam Sakshad. Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janata Vidvams Chakre Safat Samitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Hare Krishna. I welcome at this time if anyone would like to share any comments, realizations, or inspirations, or ask any questions. Hare Krishna. And that can be in person or online.
You said commit and providence moves.
What's that?
You mentioned commit and providence moves. And those
Yeah, once we commit and providence, then providence moves. It's a quote. It's commonly attributed to the German philosopher Goethe, but it was actually from someone named Hutchinson, who was sort of paraphrasing Goethe. Once we commit, providence moves. So, and for me, because like in Christian theology, there's often discussion, debate, faith or works.
Mm.
So this Vaishnavism, Bhagavatam, or the quote by Hutchins, it effectively integrates that, right? So like, sure, ultimately everything's up to God. So what am I going to do? I'll just kind of lay in bed all day and watch TV. There's some good shows on, huh? And then it's up to God. No, but Krishna is looking at, what are you intentional about? Yeah, I'll reciprocate with your desires. What are you ardently intentional about? And so the recommendation is get ardently intentional for purification of heart and devotional service. And so not that we can force that, but we can be sincere. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Krishna says, if you're sincere, I'll give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. So it requires sincerity and intelligence. And of the two, sincerity is most foundational. Krishna said, you be sincere. I'm not going to force you to be sincere. You be sincere about serving me with devotion. I'll give you the intelligence how to manage things.
I'm really appreciating it because I've had this conversation with you personally, but I'm developing a new relationship with grace. And right now, one of the ways I define grace is I put forth intention and there's something that meets me.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say it that way is prior to this, I would operate from just sheer force of will, where I was working all the time, like everything was my responsibility.
Yeah.
But there was no prayer
Right.
side of that. I was just exhausted. I was so tired. So anyway, this is expansive to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Bhakti and Rosa. Anandini, you had a comment?
Yes, I have two things. It's
Yeah.
like comments, reflection, question, mixed together.
Sure.
So one is I'd like to understand or hear if my understanding is accurate of Srila Prabhupada's purport of what he's saying, that about the chanting.
Yeah.
So mechanical chant or just chanting and hearing will not automatically lead to affection for Krishna.
Right.
That's dependent on grace. That affection, that love is dependent on grace.
Yeah.
And chanting and hearing does lead to cleansing of the diamond, purifying the heart.
Yes.
And the cleansing of the heart is not dependent on knowledge.
Right.
Okay. So,
Yeah, that's consistent with my understanding of what
okay. Okay. And I have more.
Good.
So Krishna may give us devotional service, like that's something he will give to us when we're sincere. And by devotional service, we can develop knowledge.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate how you encapsulated and summarized all of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And then I have another something I was thinking about when you spoke of, you mentioned the Vedas.
Yeah.
The Vedas. So the Vedas, they give us, they meet us where we're at. So they like if I'm interested in meat eating, I get guidelines how to eat meat in a way that I experience most pleasure and least entanglement.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so the same for war, for poetry, for sexual activities, like for everything.
Yeah.
So why does Vyasadeva say it's a pilgrimage for crows? If it's, if it's like a, I don't know how to put the question. So so I'm leading this Srimad-Bhagavatam reading group.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're in the second canto, and then we were reading a purport where Srila Prabhupada is very clear about material desire and about celibacy.
Yeah.
And essentially what he's saying, if there is any tinge of material desire in our heart,
Yeah.
whatever that desire is, we're not ready to go back to Krishna. We're not ready for the spiritual world because we still have some other desire. And it created a huge discussion. And someone, and so in this group, there's like 2 of us who are endeavoring to follow Srila Prabhupada's teachings.
Yeah.
And then there's many others who have, they're interested, and they're also listening other places, and
Yes.
like all sincere and yet different backgrounds.
Sure.
And someone mentioned, like there's the Vedas, they give other guidelines about celibacy, which are more open and wide, more liberal.
More accommodating and liberal. Yeah, sure.
And so I was a little challenged to hold the discussion together and just like represent Srila Prabhupada's teachings without attachment to looking good or whatever, to just, this is Srila Prabhupada's guideline. And I remember that sometimes Srila Prabhupada's teachings are described as the elevator process.
Elevator, yeah.
So he's giving like very the guidelines are, maybe the container could be experienced as tight.
Right. Yeah.
Yet it's clear. It's clear, and it's the elevator process. And the Vedas is more like the staircase. That's what I said. It's more like the staircase. It's a slow progress. And now hearing that it's a pilgrimage of crows, I'm thinking that maybe what I said wasn't accurate.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. And just for those who might not be aware, on Nandini, you're leading a Bhagavatam discussion group in German, Swiss German there. And thanks for leading that group. Well, from what I'm hearing from you, Nandini, what you shared with the group, it is accurate. The staircase is accurate. And well, one point is, most parts of the staircase in this yoga, they're just broken. Like the staircase will just like lead us to a dead end and fall. But at least in principle, it's like a staircase. But like we gave the example, no, it's like you gradually do meditation, yoga, and the super soul, and that'll lead you to Bhagavan realization. Yeah, it'll just take about 60,000 years. And it's like, no, but I have my yoga class. I go there every Tuesday. I mean, no, it's not going to work. No, it could help your muscle tone. We understand it might make me feel a little peace, but so most parts of the staircase are just like broken. Like maybe like 98% of the staircase is broken. But in principle, staircase that's accurate. So this Tatvayasam Tirtam, pilgrimage place for crows, it's like it's relative. It's all relative. So relative to the love of Krishna, the pure bliss, but the Vedas, as you nicely describe, Anandini, it meets us where we're at, and encourages our growth to a more sattvic lifestyle and consciousness. And so, just like you gave the meat eating example, also the Bible is the same principle, right? Let's say in terms of diet, in the very first chapter of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, God says very clearly, the appropriate diet for human beings is vegetarian, herbs, vegetables, seeds. Okay, all right. And then later in the book of Genesis, God he's giving commandments. He gives one commandment. He says, don't just slice off the leg of an animal and start eating the leg. If you're gonna kill, if you want to eat meat, if you want to eat dead flesh and taste blood, at least kill the animal. Don't torture it unnecessarily. Okay, so why is God saying that? Because he's talking to people who are doing what? He's talking to people who are doing things like slicing off the limbs of animals, okay? So God's not saying, I am so ecstatic when you just kill the animal and eat its flesh and blood. And it gives me so much. He's not saying it gives me joy. The ideal is, look, just don't have any animal slaughter like that. But if you can't do that, at least do that. There's in some of the literatures, there's guidelines to not have sex with one's mother. Okay, so what's it mean? It's like God's talking to people who are doing things like that. Okay, so so then the idea of at least follow the rules of kosher means that don't torture the animal necessarily, don't boil a calf in its mother's milk. The idea, it's like a higher state. It's like a higher state of consciousness. It's not just like this gross evil wickedness, I liking to torture, So it's a higher state. It's more sattvic, but still, so we can say it's higher. It's a higher state. That it's a staircase. It's a staircase. It's coming towards the consuming only prasadam, coming in that way, a few steps, but still, we're eating rotting flesh and blood. So from that point of view, it's tatvayasam tirtam. From that point of view, it's like a pilgrimage place for crows. Sure, compared to just the Krishna says, yes, if one neglects even the sattvic rules and regulations, then one's life is just entangled in further misery, and so compared to just being in this like tamasic, rajasic, not just tamasic, rajasic, and getting more and more entangled in that, then it's very nice what those Vedas do. Even the Upanishads, which brings one to liberation and relief from material desires, that's wonderful. It's a great spiritual achievement. But from the point of view of the pure love of Krishna, for the devotee, it's described muktir swayam mukulitanjali sevatasman, that impersonal liberation, which is what most of the yogis strive for, and it is a wonderful spiritual achievement. For the devotee, it's like hell. It's quite that the impersonal liberation is waiting at the devotee's doorstep. How can I serve you? And all the other yogis are just, I want that liberation. But for the devotee, the devotee would rather be in a material hell than impersonally liberated, because wherever a devotee is, heaven or hell, a devotee wherever I am, just let me serve you, Krishna. That's the devotee's only desire. But in impersonal liberation, there's the loss of personality. And so that's why even that's a wonderful literature, the Upanishads bringing one to Brahma-Gyoti, wonderful. But then from the point of view of Vyasadeva or Narada Muni, it's just like, it's intolerable that I won't get to personally serve Krishna. So that's some perspective.
Thank you. And when you're saying a devotee would rather be in hell, can I add, would rather be in hell serving Krishna than to be in hell without serving Krishna? I don't know if a devotee wants that.
No, well, that's the thing. If that's kind of a contradiction, to be anywhere without serving Krishna, then one's not a devotee. So yeah, a devotee is just, let me serve you. There's Lord Shiva talks to his consort Parvati. Parvati had just cursed a devotee named Chitraketu because he made some joke, and anyhow, it's a whole thing. 6th canto. Okay, and so, but she cursed him, and she so she cursed him to be in some hellish existence. So then he comes down from his like celestial airplane, and he just like gets on his knees and says, "Thank you, mother. Thank you for the curse." And then Lord Shiva is like, he says to Parvati, Narayana parasarve natu kashtana bibyati svarga pavarga narikesh vapitoyarta darshina. Look, Lord Shiva says to his consort, he says, look at these devotees. They can be in heaven, hell, earth. They can be wherever. And they just want to do service to Krishna. They just want to do service to Krishna. Right. So a devotee, a devotee would rather be in hellish, fiery existence serving Krishna than in heavenly comfort and forgetting Krishna. That's the devotional mentality.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Dr. James.
I felt in that spirit. I felt reminded of like I'm always inspired by dabble a little bit in Krishna book and the story of Krishna going to his biological mother, and it described that she was just such an austere, pious soul, and he was like, "What do you want? Like, you've been so amazing. Like, what do you want? I'll grant you anything."
Yeah.
She's like, "I just want to be your mother."
Yeah.
And then this like beautiful offering of serving Krishna, and then she goes through hell. She like gets imprisoned and has child slaughtered over and over and over. It's just this like terrible experience, and yet like when I imagine her in those moments, it doesn't even matter. It's like there's a feeling that it doesn't even matter to her, and so I just was reminded of that. I'm like, it's a constant like inspiration for me in this process is that kind of spirit of devotion and service and in hell or heaven.
Thank you, James, for invoking that pastime of Mother Devaki described in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, which is Krishna book. Yeah, Mother Devaki, it says, she's literally trapped in a dungeon with her husband Vasudev, and they just want to serve Krishna. And that's such inspiring devotees. And so that's it, because the material world, and this is Bhagavatam, material world, it's a place of disturbance. And sometimes disturbances are relatively less, and we call that material happiness. Sometimes it's relatively more, then we're really suffering and we're humiliated and whatever. And so Krishna is encouraging us. He says, Yam hi navyatiyate te pusham pusharshava samaduka sukham dira somitat bhaya kalpate. Krishna says, one who's not disturbed by the happiness and distress of material world and just continues with enthusiasm in serving me, that's liberation, that's security. Because yes, I took pratiyataya yatma supratis. The opportunity to serve Krishna, even the most catastrophic, tragic, hellish condition, the opportunity is always there, including just by the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna. And so we develop attachment to spirit, to spiritual service, Krishna service. Then that's a happiness that nothing can touch, and that time will never annihilate. Thanks for that pastime of Mother Devaki in the dungeon. Just wanted to serve Krishna. James.
A few other things that come up for me. One, the spirit was kind of like in your topic, and I was also recently reading some Nectar of Devotion, and like it's one of the first. Really, I think it was the first chapter. Like what is like the pure devotee, and there's a section like pure devotion is rare. And this essence of even like I think that's what there was notes you were talking about, like Krishna granting devotional service. So it's like giving the opportunity for devotional service. And I think it was in Nectar Devotion. It said something like, and I thought it was interesting words that Prabhupada was using. Something like the true devotee who's fully devotion is something along the lines of like is purchasing Krishna.
Okay, yeah.
It was interesting language, and I thought that was really. But more and more
interesting language.
Yeah, I'm getting this vibe that it's like really kind of like an exclusive club. Like it's like this like exclusive little space of association with Krishna. I'm just getting more and more this. It's rareness. It's very like micro pocket within the extraordinary cosmos that it is. Yeah, that was coming up for me. I just having a clearer perspective around what devotional service really is in some ways. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that reference too. I appreciate that reference so much. Yeah, Prabhupada in his translations, translating the Goswamis, he'll use business language, entrepreneurial language sometimes. And so it's described, and this is Rupa Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami, that the ticket for pure love of Krishna, the price of the ticket to get there, the price of the ticket is intense greed. intense greed. So just like everything material has its pure spiritual origin and counterpole. Well, greed is material, and yeah, greed, like whatever's working in our life, if we're greedy for more and more, we know we give ourselves no chance of happiness or peace. If we're greedy or envy or jealous, we're just destroying ourselves. We know it. We know it. But then there's spiritual greed, like greedy for more service, greedy for more service to Prabhupada, more service to Krishna, greedy to feel some actual inspiration. So Prabhupada's saying that's the price of the ticket. And then, so Krishna cannot be purchased. Lolyam, thanks for that. Yeah, lolyam, thanks for that. And yes, precisely. Lolyam is the Sanskrit for greed. And so there's material lolyam and there's spiritual lolyam. So Krishna can't be, he's not like Krishna. Krishna owns everything. Like, hey, I'll bribe him. Krishna owns everything. He's the most attractive personality. He's the most renounced personality. He's the most famous personality. He's the smartest personality. He's yes, he's the strongest, most powerful. I mean, we don't have anything that could attract him. But by just pure love, pure unconditional love, meaning I just want to serve you without needing, and in reciprocation, I want some profit, I want some adoration, I want some popularity, I want I want people to see how spiritual I am. I want people to see how pure I am without any desire for compliments or popularity or adoration or just, I just want to serve you, Krishna. And of course, Krishna makes it very clear. Krishna makes it very clear. One who sees himself as my devotee is not my devotee. And one who regards himself as the servant of my pure devotee, that's my devotee. So we know how to please Krishna through pleasing Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada makes it very clear how to serve, how to engage in bhakti. So it's described, Krishna, we don't have anything that can attract Krishna. The richest people on the planet, it's just nothing for Krishna. But with pure, sincere love, pure, sincere desire to want to serve, then Krishna is purchased. It's like it's a beautiful, it's like an ironic. It's a use of literary irony, because purchase and greed, these are very material, business-like terms, and so Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami are applying them to this most pure love.
Yeah, I'm appreciating that. I feel like I'm connecting with like in marriage, that there's a similar like in marriage, like there's such an unconditional, like I feel like in marriage in its highest form, there's such an unconditional love for each other that there is a purchasing of each other, like a sense of devoutness, ownership to each other. I'm seeing that there's a similar relationship happening. Devotional service to Krishna.
Thanks for that comparison. Beautiful.
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear it, all of it.
I was saying that I was connecting to like marriage as in its highest form. There's so much unconditional love for each other, commitment to each other. There's a purchasing almost of each other, an ownership of each other that's happening. That's mutual and just that's kind of making that connection. It's similar in devotional service to Krishna. That's honest and true and unconditional.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. That reminds me that in the Christian tradition, when I don't know about the monks, but I know the nuns, when they fully commit to their life as a nun, they marry Jesus Christ.
Yeah, true.
It's a marriage. It's like a celebration.
It's a marriage with Jesus. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that in, Nandini. Rosa.
Expanding on your conversation about the pilgrimage of crows, and as I think about that, what comes to my mind is the way crows go after things that are shiny.
Yeah,
And they like collect, and it's a distraction.
yeah,
And so in that way, in a different discussion on a different day that I don't remember, we talked about how within the material world, there's a million possibilities.
yeah,
But if we seek service through our integrity of what is ours to do,
yeah,
that's not all those distractions, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're doing the pilgrimage of crows,
right.
there's always going to be the next shiny thing, but that's
Yeah.
not ours.
Next
Even-
shiny thing. I like
Even
how
if we
you,
can attain it, like
Yeah.
there's 10 million other things to attain, what's the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
But through focusing on our service, and this is the other part too, when I think about the impersonalists, there's something I can't quite put to words about. It seems like a cop-out is what I'm thinking,
yeah.
in that there's attainment, but it's avoiding the intimacy of relationship
Yeah,
because that can be hard.
yeah, it can be hard. Yeah,
And it seems like a cop-out. Oh no, I don't have to do, I can go this way. I could do it this way. But in any activity, so let's say in personalists, and again, I don't know a lot about this, but in the way of interaction, by not interacting with personality, it reminds me of the quote, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others.
nice, nice. I appreciate that.
And in that way, it's like a special club, right? Because we get help, the thing that meets us.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosa. Okay, yeah, well, that's just, I'll just, we'll close in our final, closing a few minutes. There's a purport in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 10. And Prabhupada, he really he goes thoroughly into what you're describing. The text is Vitaraga Bhaya Kroda Manmaya Mamupashita Bhavo Gyanatapasa Putamad Bhavamagata. And anyhow, well, in the purport, Prabhupada talks about that many will go to impersonal paths of attempted spirituality because they're frustrated material relationships. And we've all experienced frustration, material relationship. We've all experienced that. And sometimes not just frustration, sometimes misery, agony. Sometimes material relationships lead to murder. I mean, just this is part of the world, right? Like, terrible pain. And so then when people hear about spiritual life, and they go, and spiritual life, there's more relationships. People are like, that's a terrible thought. But then, here you get to lose your identity. But then and Prabhupada emphasizes, but then there's spiritual relationships which have the whole range of emotion in their pure form. In their pure form, it's full of ever-increasing bliss, and so just a lot of the impersonal paths, psychologically, emotionally, they're out of frustration with material paths and lack of understanding and knowledge of what the spiritual relationship, spiritual form, spiritual communication is all about. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.